Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a little book haul. So there's 9 books here in total. These are the books I've acquired since probably December last year. The first 3 were gifted to me. The next 3 I picked up at various places secondhand. And the final 3 are books that I bought new. So without further ado, my lovely friend Charlie from Charlie Brook Reads gave 2 books to me for Christmas. The first of which is The Incredible Crime, a Cambridge Mystery by Lois Austen-Leigh, which I had never heard of before. I don't believe I've read from this author before. It was first published in 1931, and the author apparently was the great niece of Jane Austen. So this is about Prudence, who is the master's daughter at Prince's College, Cambridge, and somehow she becomes embroiled in this quest to track down these drug smugglers. It's described as being witty and entertaining, and just from looking at like the opening, it does look like it might be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that one. This can go on my British Crime Classic TBR shelf, which is that one there. I've got like practically a whole shelf full now, which is very exciting. Charlie also got me Shot with Crimson by Nicola Upson. Now, let me tell you, if you're following the Read Good prompts for this year from Ben Reads Good, the prompt for February was Flamuary, read a book with fire or a flame on the cover. And I swear I went through all these books and none of them had fire on the cover. Now, I don't know if I did that before Christmas, before I got this book, potentially. So this might not be my fault. But anyway, until a few days ago when I was thinking about filming this book haul, until then I did not click on to the fact that this very much would fit that prompt. So I did start another book with Flamuary, which was a non-fiction, which I'll talk about in my February wrap up. I'm going to DNF that. I'm going to read this instead. Even though February finishes today, so I'm actually going to read it in March, but I'm still going to count it for Flamuary. But anyway, what is this? This sounds excellent. So Nicola Upson writes this crime series featuring like the detective character of Josephine Tay, who was a real life murder mystery author. And I've not read any before, but this one in particular sounds excellent because it's set in 1939 and it's set on the set of the Hitchcock movie Rebecca. How good does that sound? I love Rebecca so much. It says a shocking act of violence emerges from shadows of the past. And then it leads back to the secretive house that inspired a young Daphne du Maurier to create Mandalay, a trail that echoes Rebecca's timeless themes of obsession, resentment and murder. This just sounds so excellent. So I'm going to be reading that in March. Thank you, Charlie. The lovely Ange from Ange's Book Chatter passed this on to me. This is Neon Roses by Rachel Dawson, and there is a little quote on the front from Sarah Waters which says, "Tender, sexy, uplifting and fun." And if anyone is going to make me read a book, it is Sarah Waters. So this sounds excellent. So it's set in the 80s in South Wales at the time of the miners' strike, and we're following I think a young woman who becomes involved in the group Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners. So this sort of historical fact of that group supporting the miners was something I only became aware of, like, honestly, a couple of years ago. So I think it's following that, but focusing in particular on this I think young woman who meets someone else. I think it's like a queer coming of age story, and it just sounds really excellent. And if Sarah Waters says it's good, then I have to read it. So the next 3 books are books that I've picked up secondhand from various places. The first one, the background to this book is that the day before I saw this, so I got this one from a little bookshelf in work. There's various bookshelves around the place where you can leave books you don't want anymore and pick up any that are of interest to you. And the day before I saw this book, we'd had our work book club, and the book we read was The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden, who runs the channel Books and Things. I love that book so much. But anyway, as part of that discussion, as always happens in book club, you know, the conversation sort of tangents off in various ways. And someone mentioned the author Emma Tennant, who I had never heard of before. I think Emma Tennant wrote a lot of books, but one of which I think was called Adele, and it was featuring the character of Adele, who is the child who Jane Eyre looks after as a governess. So anyway, the very next day on this shelf in work, I happened to see this spine, and it is Emma Tennant, Travesties, and I was like, Emma Tennant? I'm sure I heard of this person only yesterday. Then I picked up the book, and this is the cover. And honestly, when I saw this cover, I knew I had to pick this book up and take it home. Even though this cover completely freaks me out. I cannot look at it for very long. I have to turn the book face down because it's so creepy. This like woman's face, and then like one of her eyes is her lips, and her lips is an eye. It really, really freaks me out quite a lot. So this is actually a collection of 3 of Emma Tennant's novels, which were first published across, I think it was like the 70s, 80s and 90s. So we've got The Bad Sister, which is about the life and death of this wealthy Scottish landowner, and then the diary of his illegitimate daughter comes to light, which I guess is going to reveal some secrets. We've also got 2 Women of London, which is a modern retelling of Jekyll and Hyde. And we have Faustine, why can't I say that word? Faustine, which is a modern day retelling of the Faust legend. So it sounds really interesting. It says, these 3 volumes constitute a chilling display of virtuoso fiction from a contemporary writer of international stature. Someone in book club did say that they'd read a couple of these before and they thought they were really interesting, so I'm definitely intrigued. I don't know where this horrific cover comes into play across those 3 novels, but I'm very interested to find out. The next book is one that I picked up from a secondhand book fair that I go to quite regularly with my dad. It's run by a couple of independent secondhand bookshops who bring some of their stock along once a month to this book fair. And this is quite a special find. So I'll explain what it is and then I'll explain why it is so special. So I picked up this folio edition of The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. Let me get it out its box. It's secondhand, but it's in perfect condition. I'll show you a couple of the rather nice illustrations. Let's see. Here we go. So I got this for £4, and the bookseller knew that she was underselling this book because this is worth a lot more than £4. I think she said that they acquired a load of, I think, Folio Society editions, and she knew that if she charged what they are worth, no one would buy them, which I can understand, but I think she could sell them for more online. So anyway, £4 for this was an incredible bargain. But the reason this is so special is because Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, who we lost last year, this is one of her favourite book series. Excuse me, I just had a coughing fit because I'm getting over an illness. So yes, this is one of Alice's favourite series, and I had never heard of it before I first heard Alice talk about this. So I believe it's called The Dark is Rising Sequence, and it's a children's fantasy series, first published I think across the 60s and 70s. And I believe there's 5 books in the series. I think The Dark is Rising, which is what the overall series is known as, but The Dark is Rising is actually the 2nd book in the series, I believe. I've not read any of them yet. I do want to read them. I've wanted to read them ever since I first heard Alice talk about them because of how much she really loved them. Weirdly, my library doesn't have a copy of them, so I'm thinking I might just try and pick up sort of a cheap set of the full series online, maybe secondhand or something. But I had to get this just because I knew how much Alice loved this series of books. I knew it was a series that I want to read, so I will read from this edition, probably once I've read obviously the first one in the series. But it's just such a lovely sort of find. that I had to sort of bring it home, and yeah, it just very much reminds me of Alice. So that's a very special find. And then the final used book that I got before we go into the books that I bought new is Portrait of a Murderer, A Christmas Crime Story by Meredith. This is another British Library crime classic. I don't think I've heard of this one before. It was first published in 1934. Obviously I'm going to save this to read in December. I love like a classic murder mystery set at Christmas time. And this one sounds really, really good. And so the first line, actually, there's like the first little like paragraph thing. It says, Adrian Gray was born in May 1862 and met his death through violence at the hands of one of his own children at Christmas 1931. The crime was instantaneous and unpremeditated, and the murderer was left staring from the weapon on the table to the dead man in the shadow of the tapestry curtains, not apprehensive, not yet afraid, but incredulous and dumb. And that's how the book opens, and that just sounds excellent. So this sounds like just my ideal murder mystery setup. So it's set obviously at Christmas. I believe it opens at Christmas Eve, and Adrian is the patriarch of this family, and he invites his family to stay at his house over Christmas. None of his children like him. Several want him to die. I have reason to wish him dead. And then he dies. It says, this fascinating and unusual novel tells a story of what happened that dark Christmas night and what the murderer did next. And that all sounds very, very intriguing to me. So roll on December so I can read this one. Then the final three books I picked up new. So I paid a visit to Dead Ink bookshop in Liverpool. And I got these in January. They had a 3 for 2 offer on. So the first one I picked up was one that I knew I wanted to get when I went. And this is Mystery Lights. It's a short story collection by Lena, Valencia. And this is published by Dead Ink themselves. It says, introducing an electrifying new voice in contemporary fiction that illuminates the many forces that haunt us. It says, from the all too real horror of a sexual predator on a college campus to a lost sister transformed by cave-dwelling creatures, this debut story collection grapples with terrors both familiar and fantastic. It sounds really interesting. It sounds sort of like weird mystery horror, like, yeah, it says these are stories with teeth. It just very much sounds like my kind of thing, and I believe Melinda from A Web of Stories really, really enjoyed this one. Excuse me, I just had another coughing fit. I also picked up the Iliac Crest by Cristina Rivera Garza, who I think is a Mexican author. This is translated by Sarah Booker. This is a book I've been interested for a little while. It was first published in 2002. It's quite short. I've heard good things about this and it sounds weird and intriguing. So, on a dark and stormy night, an unnamed narrator is visited by two women who question their host and claim to know his greatest secret, that he is in fact a woman. In increasingly desperate attempts to defend his masculinity, he finds himself spiralling deeper into a haunted past that may or may not be his own. So I think it examines gender and queerness. I've heard good things about it, but I don't really know what to expect from it. It sounds very unusual and very strange, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I want to read more translated stuff this year, so this one can go on my like translated shelf, like up to about here is like translated stuff, so that can go on there. And then also at Dead Ink they had some blind date with the books, which I always love, and the one I picked up on the like cover, it said provocative, culture clash and transformative. Okay, sorry, the cat's just come in the room. Provocative, culture clash and transformative, which I thought sounded excellent. And I'm really pleased with this. I have never heard of this before, but it sounds excellent. This is Sworn Virgin by Elvira, who is from Albania, and this is translated from Italian by, let's see, Ishmael Kadare. No, that's who wrote the foreword. It's translated by Clarissa Botsford. This is published by And Other Stories, who also published the Iliac Crest. Coincidence? So I've never heard of this before, but it sounds really good. It says winner of the English Pen Award, and it's also made into a prize-winning film. So, sorry, I had another coughing fit. So, this is about Hannah, and her dying uncle calls her back from the city to the family home in the Albanian mountains. He tries to marry her off to a local man, but she is determined to remain independent. So her only option is to follow tradition and vow to live the rest of her life in chastity as a man. And so Hannah becomes Mark. So apparently when I had a quick look about this online, that this is like a traditional Albanian thing that happens. I mean, I don't know if it still commonly happens or not, but I think the daughter of a family, if they decide not to marry and stuff, they can then go and live their life in chastity as a man. So anyway, but then it says years later, Mark receives an invitation to join a cousin in the US. This may be Mark's only chance to escape his vow. But what does he know about being an American woman? So it looks at, obviously, aspects of gender, and I believe it's like quite well regarded. So I'm very interested in this. It sounds really interesting. And another work in translation, which is perfect. So those are all the books that I've acquired in the last few months. I did get some book vouchers for Christmas, which I haven't spent yet, unusually for me, but I'm just waiting for the right book to come along. So do let me know if you've read any of those books and what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.